We're going to talk football finance. Don't switch off because it could affect your team. It's been a bad old year for Scottish football, Premier League football in some areas, and indeed Championship football. Port Vale going into administration, so too Rangers, and also a lot of clubs in the Premier League feeling the pinch in terms of finances. We've got Gerald Krasner, the former Leeds chairman. We all know about the problems that Leeds had when they couldn't manage their finances all those years ago. He's waiting to speak to us on the phone, so let's go straight to him. Evening, Gerald.
Good evening.
Evening, Gerald. Now, you've been speaking extensively this week about the problems involving football finance, and you made a number of very pertinent points in doing so. You were saying that 10 of the 72 Football League clubs, in your opinion, are going to go out of business by 2020. And you also said made the point that more than 40 clubs in England have gone into administration since 1986. So just to kick us off, what are football clubs doing so wrong?
Well, it's the business model. They have 36 days of income and 365 days of expenditure, and they're unable to bridge the gap, coupled with the fact that the wage bill keeps escalating and is such a high percentage of turnover as to make the pressure on football clubs' finances unbearable at times.
Gerald, it's Leroy here. When I was manager of Torquay maybe about 7-8 years ago, I seem to remember a trial season where we had to have our wage bill couldn't be any more than 60% of turnover. And we went through that, and then it just seemed to be forgotten. I thought it was an excellent idea.
It was a one-off, I think, that, of capping the wage bill. That would be a good solution. The problem is, to change any regulations, the football chairman have to vote in favour of it. And those clubs that are run well will not vote in favour of something to help the others. It's self-interest.
Interesting point, because I mean I can see a picture of you in our Skype wall here, a big beaming smile on your face next to the chairman of Leeds United, Ken Bates, and he really does run a tight ship. But all those years ago Leeds didn't. Why have so few clubs learned from the mistakes that they made?
Well, a number of clubs are self-funded by the directors, and when you're spending your own money, you're a bit more careful than when you're spending other people's money. And that's how Leeds got into problems. Under the Ridsdale era, they were spending other people's money. And then we had to go and sort it out. With Ken Bates and myself, I think we were using our own money. And, as I say, you're a lot more careful.
Now, Gerald, Leroy's going to come in a sec, but you made a really good point in your piece where you said whenever a football club is for sale, you get 20 time wasters, many of whom bail out when they realise the finances involved in having to purchase a club. And we've seen with Rangers that there have been people involved in the bidding process, some of whom have bowed out, I would assume, for similar reasons. What's your reading of that situation?
Rangers is a one-off. The wage bill at Rangers is so high, and bearing in mind you have to take over the players' contracts, that it is not a normal administration. I think the wage bill going forward is putting off people being serious bidders, because if they didn't have that wage bill, they'd be queuing up to buy a club like Rangers.
Do you think that they will struggle to actually find a long-term buyer for the club?
Well, it's interesting because I think the administrators today have put their proposals, which is an almighty set of papers, onto the website. And if you can't sleep at night, it'll make interesting reading. I think somebody will come out the woodwork and buy it, but they've got to have deep pockets.
Gerald, I hear your real concerns there about our game and the future of our game. You're saying that 10 clubs are going to go out of business in 2020. So do you think the game should still be trusted to those chairmen and directors, or should something radical happen? Should the government get involved and say, look, this can't happen to our beautiful game. We need to put some things in structure where clubs have got to adhere to for their own good?
I don't think the government getting involved will do any good. Maybe they should pressurise a bit. I know it has, to some extent, it has improved over the last few years, in that the Football League has actually worked with the revenue to ensure that going forward, clubs are not run by not paying the pay-as-you-earn, because they get embargoed if they get behind. I just think that the model needs looking at again, and maybe the regulations need bringing into the 21st century. I'm not saying I've got all the answers. I've got a few views on it, but I think it wouldn't hurt to have some sort of committee produce a report on the next 10 years football finance.
We have to, of course, point out that obviously FIFA do tend to frown on governments getting involved in the domestic game, and so that couldn't really happen, even if we wanted to. I mean, it's a really good point that Leroy makes, but FIFA just wouldn't allow it to happen. Gerard, I want you to name a few names for us, because we've got obviously examples at the moment in the Premier League. QPR, if they were to go down, they've got a lot of players who do not have in their contracts, highly paid contracts, clauses to take wage cuts. Could you see another nightmare scenario happening at Loftus Road?
I haven't really studied QPR in depth. We've been looking at the Championship, Division 1 and 2, and we think there's at least 19 clubs there under pressure.
Which ones do you believe are under pressure?
The last club in the Premiership that really had problems, apart from Portsmouth, was Hull. Hull had a few problems that were well documented. There's not many clubs in the Premiership that actually make money, but their owners have very deep pockets. The question you have to ask is, just for example, Chelsea, if something should happen to Mr. Abramovich, how the heck would they sort that problem out?
The only thing is, Gerald, that's a fairly easy one, isn't it? I mean, people say a very similar one about the guys who run Manchester City. But I'm looking at the clubs lower down the tier, you know, the ones who are trying to push the boat out.
I know this is going to sound perverse, but one of the ways of making money is to keep getting relegated and promoted. I know that sounds really perverse, but with the parachute payments, you can actually make a profit in the Championship. And then if you get promoted the next season, you're back in the Premiership. That's not a business model I recommend.
I was going to say, it hardly sounds like a recipe for success.
No, all for popularity.
Yeah. Just one other quick one. I mean, Swansea is a really. We were talking before the show, and we were saying Swansea are a club. They've done well in the Premier League in their first season, played good football. If Brendan Rodgers and the guys who run the place want to take the club to the next level, and they want to go out and buy a couple of marquee signings, do they go out and really push the boat out and bring... Leroy's shaking his head already.
I think that's a recipe for disaster,
Why?
Honestly. I think trying to buy success was one of the reasons Leeds United ended up where they did, and a few other clubs have tried that. I think you have to recognise that whereas years ago, if you had a few £1 million, you could own your local football club. Now you need to be a billionaire to get in the top flight, and even that's not necessarily enough.
I totally agree with Gerald.
I disagree. I actually disagree.
Let me tell you why I totally agree with Gerald, because when I was at Torquay, Swansea came in for Adebayo Akinfenwa, went to tribunal and they got him for £65,000. They don't waste money. And the reason why I say I disagree is because the formula that they've got works. Why change it? They get players in and they've brought them through. There's not been a lot of changes. Every manager has bought into what Hugh Jenkins, the Met chairman, wants to do. And Brendan Rodgers has only bought a few players. He bought Sinclair in, he's bought Danny Graham in, but the nucleus of that squad has been the same for many years, and it's been successful. So why go and tear that all apart by trying to sign marquee signings for big money who you're not sure are going to go to the valleys and settle in there, where there's players who really want to be there, who really want to make a name for themselves, not just at Swansea but at Norwich as well. That has worked, definitely. Then you look at QPR, who actually finished above both those sides in the Championship. They've gone and spent big money, and they're the ones looking at relegation this year. Now, Norwich,
I think spending big money is not... Well, there's no guarantees in football, we all know that. But spending big money is not a guarantee to success.
Stay ahead of the game with Sports Tonight Live. Don't miss a thing. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Search for Sports Tonight Live on Facebook and like our fan page. Follow Sports Tonight TV on Twitter and tweet us your thoughts and opinions. Sports Tonight Live, it's the platform for the fans.